further ado, I would like to introduce Shannon Greenwood with National RTAP. Good afternoon and welcome, Shannon.
Great. Thanks so much, Frank, and welcome everyone to today's networking webinar for state RTAP managers. And today's topic of discussion is going to be the costs and benefits of outsourcing your RTAP program. Just before we get into things, I want to go over what we'll be doing today. We'll start with a welcome and an introduction, and then we'll move to our 3 presentations from Pennsylvania, Idaho, and Florida. Speaking about the Pennsylvania RTAP program will be Bob Sharp, Chief of Rural and Intercity Division with Pennsylvania DOT. From Idaho, we have John Krause, Mobility Program Manager with Idaho DOT. And last, from Florida, we'll have Mike Wright, and he's the statewide CAP and Florida RTAP Manager, and he is with the Florida DOT. At the end of all of those presentations, we'll actually be going through the results of a survey that National RTAP conducted in November. We actually sent a survey out to states that outsource their RTAP programs, and we'll be sharing some of those results today. Following all the presentations, as Frank said, we'll take all of your questions and answers. Just for a brief introduction, as some of you may know from previous webinars, all the topics that we've been talking about were selected by RTAP managers, and this list was made during the first webinar that took place in March. The presentations are all done by RTAP managers. And the idea of it was it would be a venue for discussion and networking with the RTAP managers and kind of give everybody an opportunity to find out how other states are doing things. Our last networking webinar took place on August 4th, and the topic was best practices in direct technical assistance. And to start us off today is going to be Bob Sharp in Pennsylvania. Bob?
Okay, thank you. We're going to talk today about the Pennsylvania RTAP program, which we call Penn Train, and we'll start with a little history. Next slide. Our RTAP program was actually started in 1988, and Penn State University actually managed the program in its early days. In 1992, we renamed it the Penn Train program, and actually one of our transit agencies, the Indiana County Transit Authority, took it over for several years. In 1995, we brought it back into Penn State University, and they managed it until 1997. In 1997, we had 2 state associations, one a fixed routes association basically, and one a demand response association, and they combined into one association and formed the Pennsylvania Public Transportation Association. And we thought at that time it would be advantageous to bring our training RTAP program under the Pennsylvania Public Transportation Association. Matter of fact, at that time I was a transit manager in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, and I was part of the committee that wrote the scope of work to bring it into PPTA. So by 2000, we brought it into PPTA, and they've been running it ever since. And by the way, with me today is Cindy Conaway, and she manages the Penn Train program for the Pennsylvania Public Transportation Association. So later on, if you have any questions for Cindy, she'll be happy to answer them. Next slide. The Penn Train program has developed many trainings, but we're very proud of 2 award-winning trainings, national award-winning trainings. The Transit Score program, which has trained people up and down the East Coast from many states surrounding Pennsylvania, I think as far away as Georgia, and our Professional Supervisor program, another award-winning program. So we've had great success in training transit professionals, not only in Pennsylvania but surrounding states. And by the way, our program is strictly a training program. We do not provide technical assistance. PennDOT, through another contract, provides technical assistance to all grantees, rural and urban. Next slide. You know, we've never really thought about bringing it back. We have such a great relationship with the Pennsylvania Public Transportation Association, and we believe the product we receive for the price could not be duplicated. It's on a state level, as everyone knows, it's pretty hard to hire anybody, and to try and hire somebody to run the program, we just found was not cost effective. Reduces our legacy cost. You don't have the health care and retirement and everything like that. So it really is cost effective. So we've never really given any thought to bringing it back in-house. Another thing we've done this year is under the Pennsylvania Public Transportation Association, we formed a Penn Train committee, and it's a committee made up of rural transit providers, and we'll be meeting twice a year to discuss the needs of the transit industry, what type of trainings we should be presenting. So we have input from folks all across the state. Next slide. Again, by outsourcing, we reduced our legacy cost. We free up the time of the PennDOT staff, to engage in other projects. I would tell you that right now I'm sitting in Penn Train's office at the Pennsylvania Public Transportation Association. We're literally 5 minutes apart. Cindy and I, Marty Pierce, who's the director of PPTA, we all work very closely together to provide trainings and figure out what the folks in Pennsylvania really need. So it's a real team effort here on the part of PennDOT and PPTA. Next slide. As all of you know, with states, it's also hard for people to travel, even sometimes in-state, to attend trainings. The benefits of having Penn Train manage this program is their flexibility to travel. In our case, Cindy's knowledge of the training sites around Pennsylvania. So, I mean, if we want to have a training, she knows in a minute where the training should be. And she also knows what type of things she needs to take to different sites. So there are things we don't have to worry about. And again, we don't need to hire full-time PennDOT staff to manage the program. Next slide. We also, before I end, would tell you that although we have a very robust training program, we cannot do everything. We encourage all of our grantees to visit the National RTAP website and use the products that are available to them from the National RTAP. As we all know, it's just a wealth of knowledge there, and there are many grantees throughout Pennsylvania that use National RTAP products. So we always encourage them to do that. PennDOT staff, RTAP staff time, I said about 200 hours a year. I really don't know. Of the 200 hours, probably 160 are my hours, and maybe 40 hours we have a person in the office that manages the grant itself. So then maybe they work about 40 hours. That was really just a guess, but that's pretty much RTAP in Pennsylvania in a nutshell. So we'll be happy to answer questions later on. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Bob. Next up from Idaho, we're going to have John Krause. John?
Shannon, thank you. RTAP management in Idaho is through a partnership between my organization at Idaho Transportation Department and the Transit Association for the state. Next slide. Idaho Transportation Department, or ITD as the abbreviation, is the DOT for the state of Idaho. And the Transit Association in Idaho is the Community Transportation Association of Idaho, or CTAI, which is a statewide parallel organization, I guess, to the Community Transportation Association of America. Prior, just a little bit of history too, as I think Bob gave you, prior to 2005 or 2006, CTAI's primary purpose was to facilitate the process for providers to apply for and receive 5309 bus and bus facility funding, or earmarks. But today they're a major key partner for us in interfacing with stakeholders, local governments, businesses, and transportation providers. And really because of that solid working relationship they have that they've created with Idaho's rural transit providers, it makes sense. It's continued to make sense that they also manage the state's RTAP program. Next slide. Towards the end of 2007 into 2008, our department began rethinking how we delivered public transportation services. Prior to 2007, our customers were the state transit providers. But starting in 2007 into 2008, we wanted to work more closely with stakeholders and with local communities. But we also knew we still needed to manage grants and provide the funding interface between the FTA and service providers. And so we saw our core competencies within our division as grant management, to be subject matter experts and technical assistance. CTAI at the same time had begun evolving from their role as coordinator of campaigns to seek 5309 funding. And they had begun to strengthen relationships with all of their members. At that point, we saw that it made sense then, it was basically common sense then, to channel the RTAP program in Idaho to this evolving CTAI. Next slide. One of CTAI's key successes was development of the I-Way paradigm and vision, and the little 20-second elevator speech for what I-Way is about. It's a growing statewide network that connects people to an exciting mix of transportation options, giving Idaho an economic and quality of life advantage while helping keep clean and beautiful. CTAI through I-Way provides a platform for mobility management. And it also creates a nexus between ITD, between us, stakeholders, local governments, and providers. And ITD's arrangement with CTAI gives them responsibility for mobility management, rideshare, and the state's RTAP programs. Next slide. Shannon asked all of us to address a handful of questions regarding our experiences with outsourcing. So, first question, are we happy with our decision? And clearly, yes. CTI is meeting all of our goals and expectations for the program. They provide a well-defined channel for us for program delivery, for the RTAP program delivery, but also for rideshare and mobility management. For RTAP, CTI developed a group to govern the RTAP program, steering committee type council. And CTI planned and delivered an annual conference this past October that involved, all of the providers along with our other partners. They completed a program plan for RTAP for the next 3 years. And looking at all those different things they accomplished, we in ITD know we wouldn't have the resources or the time or the bandwidth to be successful on our own in all of these areas. Next slide. This is just a real quick snapshot of what's in the RTAP plan for Idaho. So this is what CTAI put together to help guide the program over the next 3 or 4 years. Next slide. Do we have any second thoughts? Will we consider bringing the program back? And I guess what I want to say there is a lot of RTAP is about relationships, and CTI has done a great job building these relationships. And we at ITD would have our hands full rebuilding and recrafting these relationships, processes, and programs. And once again, I think as Bob may have said, we don't have the bandwidth. We don't have the ability to do that. Next slide. Advice. What suggestions do we have regarding outsourcing your RTAP programs? The process we followed, our procurement and funding approach process, may not work for you. So obviously you need to follow your state's conventions for procurement and funding. And you need to gauge and determine the strengths and weaknesses of your candidates who you're considering to partner with and outsource the RTAP program, to, and see what relationships they have, with your audience out there, with your RTAP audience. Do they have something they're already doing with providers? Without micromanaging, have a well-defined scope and purpose for the engagement with your RTAP manager. You should make sure to build goals and performance measures into the agreement with your partner and have a process and some kind of algorithm in mind to determine cost effectiveness. Next slide. Has outsourcing the RTAP program been cost effective? And this is where I don't think we've formally or mathematically measured and evaluated the cost effectiveness of Idaho's RTAP arrangement, but we know we need to do that. But intuitively, we know that the program's worked well and has met the goals for the program. And we sense again that if we wanted to bring this in-house or keep this in-house, we wouldn't have the ability cost-wise to do that. Next slide. What's been the feedback from the field regarding CTI's management of the RTAP program? We don't currently have mechanisms in place for providers to tell us at the DOT about their satisfaction with the program. On the other hand, sometimes you say, no news, no bad news is good news. So there's been no complaints to DOT from providers about the RTAP program and how it's being managed. And we think having the RTAP steering committee as put together by CTAI and with provider representation on that committee has been positive. It's gone a long way, I think, to maintaining satisfaction and having a conduit directly for any feedback. Overall, I think providers in the DOT have been happy with CTI's performance as our RTAP manager. Next slide. What are the benefits of outsourcing RTAP? And I think that we're all saying the same thing, and I guess you can call it staff augmentation. It's a great response to shrinking budgets and freezes on staffing. And it also allows us at the DOT to focus on what we really can do best, core competencies. And we found that CTI can be more responsive and agile in ways that we cannot. And for providers, it's significant and attractive, I think, that they're not having to deal with the state, with the DOT. So that's seen as again, more attractive. Providers also, through the governance mechanism, may have an increased perception that they own or share the program, and that's good. Next slide. What are the times and costs required of the DOT to manage the arrangement with the outsourced RTAP manager? And for us, it's really only 4 to 8 hours a month, half of what I think Bob reported at about 200 per year. So it's minimal. But you have to keep in mind that investment of our time, needs to expand, we believe, to include more performance measurements and surveying of customer satisfaction on the part of the providers. Next slide. Are there other costs or time investments? And really, you have to keep in mind the upfront cost of setting up the arrangement. So you have whatever procurement process you may have. So we have to, make sure that that's kept in mind. The DOT needs and should want to stay involved in any governance or oversight structure and processes. So that means, devoting some time to participate on any steering committee or governance group. And, of course, performance monitoring and measurement requires a healthy, appropriate investment of time and effort. And then last slide. Just in closing, RTAP in Idaho is a partnership between a number of parties, ITD, National RTAP, CTAI, and the I-Way structure and paradigm. And I think in terms of any questions, we're holding those towards the end.
Great. Thank you, John. Next up, we have Mike Wright in Florida.
Good afternoon. The Florida experience. The first slide. The decision to outsource. Well, we, as both Bob and John have explained, in being a state DOT, we're very limited in staffing. And also, I don't know about other states, but we have an internal policy where we don't use federal funds personnel costs, for salary and so on, for the legacy costs. So that further constrains our ability to add staff. And so it was decided, since this is 100% federal funds, this was an easy one to decide to outsource. At first, we decided we went with one of our state universities, one of the 11 state universities, and it went well. But then we decided we wanted something different, and in 2003 we switched over to the Center for Urban Transportation Research at the University of South Florida in Tampa, and that's been that was a very good decision. Next slide. We chose to go with a public entity rather than private consultant, primarily because we have the department has a master contract with each of our state universities, and so we can issue basically a contract as in the form of a task work order, and there's minimal prep work. It's just, you know, the task work order, and then the scope is your Exhibit A, and then you decide what the payment's going to be, you know, lump sum, reimbursement, so on. And we do this on a lump sum percentage complete basis, and our scope is our work plan, so it's fairly detailed. And we started on a 3-year cycle, but due to the financial constraints and uncertainty, and especially with the federal budget, you know, never really ever being adopted in this last few years, we've had to go to an annual cycle, which drives our friends, our partners at Cutter a little crazy, but they understand. And because of the structure of this task work order, we're very flexible, and we can nimbly, you know, implement the next cycle pretty fast. And with this arrangement, they're limited to a 10% indirect cost maximum, which really helps us with getting the maximum amount of bang for our dollar. Next slide. We thought about recently bringing back the RTAP to the central office, to DOT. Primarily, it was just an exercise to see if it was cost effective to keep it, you know, outsourced. And of course the result was yes, it is incredibly cost effective to keep it outsourced, because Cutter has access to expertise that we just don't have here, and they can do things that we can't do. They can provide a very effective website based out of Cutter, based out of University of South Florida, that if we tried to do that in-house at Florida DOT, we'd have so many constraints and restrictions on what we could and couldn't do, how often we could upload, you know, the quickness of uploading things on it, if you go to different websites, you know, at the Florida DOT, you'll find that they aren't very effective from an IT point of view. And they can provide us with a quarterly electronic newsletter without any problem. They provide us technical assistance. They provide the agency's technical assistance, as well as they handle the training schedule. Some of it they contract out to outside experts that they, you know, subcontract out, and others are it's done by the staff that the project managers of the Cutter from Cutter that man the RTAP project there. And also we found that because of its housed at the University of South Florida, that we are beginning to tap into the unmined value of the university's distance learning infrastructure. And so we're setting up more computer-based training and things like that that help in this age of limited travel budgets and just, you know, so many agencies don't have the staff to give up for a couple of days to go for training. That this way they can do it online at their own pace, their own leisure, and as well as some that you have to, you know, key in at certain times. But that stuff we could never have done in-house. So next slide. Results we get, we think, a pretty big bang for our buck. We contract them with $130,000 a year, and we get all that I had mentioned. In addition, our annual paratransit rodeo that we do, that's a separate contract we do with one of our transit agencies, but the RTAP project provides training out of our RTAP contract at that event, and they you know, it's stuff specific to driver safety and driver effectiveness. And then there's an annual conference that the Florida Commission for Transportation Disadvantage does every year. And the Transportation Disadvantage Commission is Florida's response to United We Ride. In fact, it was there before United We Ride, and some say it was the template for the national program. And that they deal with the coordination of all the transportation programs county by county that deal with the transportation disadvantage. And anyway, they have this annual conference that we, over the last few years, have developed a RTAP tract to be available to the users, the attendees there, because more than half of them are also, you know, RTAP beneficiaries, recipients. Next slide. The results, like John said, you know, we haven't really polled everyone asking if they're happy or not happy, but we haven't had anyone ringing our phones and burning up our emails saying that they're unhappy. When we do ask them, everyone says, oh yeah, you know, the Cutter's doing a great job. You know, they're very effective, they're very responsive, they come up with a great schedule. Because part of our contract with Cutter is, you know, they periodically survey the agencies to see what's their priority, where do they see their needs for training and things like that. You know, what's their burning topic. And for example, one of them was disability etiquette training for drivers, and we looked all over and we didn't find anything outside that we thought was current and effective. And so we did a supplemental contract with Cutter to develop a computer-based training module for that topic, and that came out of our survey with our clients. And it also provides our rural transit agencies, our small agencies, a one-stop location, because our department has other contracts, other programs with Cutter dealing with vehicle procurement and other driver training initiatives and other technical assistance contracts that are available. And so this provides like an umbrella where we can make sure that if our project doesn't satisfy, maybe there's some other project that we have going on with Cutter that will fit that agency's needs. In many ways, like I said here, you know, we feel that that our RTAP program is a micro version of the national RTAP as far as what the staff is structured. We have an advisory committee, and we have a, you know, extensive resource library that people can access, and we encourage. We have, you know, online communication, and so we're very, very happy with the way the program has grown and the quality of it. And I think that's the last slide, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes. So back to you,
Great.
Shannon.
Thank you so much, Mike. Great. Now, as I had said earlier, in November, National RTAP sent out an online survey to 18 states that currently outsource their RTAP programs. And we received 8 responses back. And I just wanted to go through some of the numbers and also some of the comments that we received from that survey. First here, we wanted to find out who the states were outsourcing to. And as you can see from the chart here, the most popular with 38% were transit associations. Following that, you had universities and consultants. And then 12% here at the bottom that shows other actually outsources to a transit institute. And we also asked, you know, are your contractors in-state or are they out-of-state? And 75% responded that their contractor was in-state, and 25% responded that their contractor was out-of-state. Here you can see we asked, what are the factors that caused you to outsource the RTAP program? And they had the option to click as many that applied. And as you can see here, and it has been mentioned in the presentations that just took place, staff availability was the main factor that caused states to outsource their RTAP programs, followed by special expertise offered by the contractor and convenience. 11% of the cost of the program. And the other comment that was added was an overarching statewide strategy to focus transit resources with the state association. So in that case, you know, an overarching planning issue. We also asked about the bidding process and contract lengths. 2 states didn't have to put the contract out to bid based on the contractors they chose. One contractor with a state university and the other with the State Transit Association. 3 replied that they had a competitive bidding process. And here from the chart you can see 2 states have an annual review. 1 state's contract is 30 months. 1 state has a 3-year contract. 3 states have 5-year contracts. And 1 state has an indefinite contract with the RTAP provider. We also wanted to find out what types of tasks is the contractor responsible for. And the blank space at the top is no states asked the contractor to be responsible for grants. And it seems that the most popular ones were training with 88% and also hosting a website with 88%. What was also popular was hosting an annual conference, maintaining a calendar of events, direct technical assistance, a newsletter, and scholarships. So this just gives you a sense of what state contractors are taking care of what tasks. We also wanted to find out, and it was talked a little bit about in the presentations, approximately how much time does the DOT staff spend managing the contractor? What's their cost in time? And 5 states replied that they spend less than 10 hours per month. 1 state said 10 to 40 hours per month. And 2 states replied that they spend 40 hours or more per month working with their RTAP provider. And here, the respondents had the opportunity to actually type in some comments and give some benefits of outsourcing specifically to the state DOT. And as you'll see from all 3 comments and from the presentations that we just had, it's really an issue of staff reductions, short staffing, and just not having the capacity in-house to take care of all the tasks that they would like the RTAP program to be handling. The last one also talks about the expertise that the contractor has and also just improving the quality of service. And it lessening the burden on the state DOT. Just a continuation of that, but specifically benefits to the transit providers. Here you have the ability to put up a website. You have a one-stop shopping center. The contractor is closer to them in some positions. And also it's just another resource on top of the state DOT that a provider can go to for technical assistance. And here we just asked generally, do you find this outsourcing to be a cost-effective option? And there was a resounding answer of yes with 86%, with just 14% saying no. And here we just asked for some advice that these states might have for other states who are considering outsourcing their RTAP program. And pieces of advice included evaluating whether you have the capacity to handle it in-house. Also choosing a contractor carefully and being involved even after you've handed the program to the contractor, and also being careful to follow the FTA procurement process as you're going through this. And this one was particularly detailed, so I wanted to put down everything, and I won't read it out to you, but it really just talks about evaluating if a contractor already is in place to successfully manage the RTAP program. So what are they doing already that would help them to successfully provide service and as an RTAP contractor? And on the other side of that, if there isn't an existing structure, really explain in detail what would be expected of them if they were to win the contract. And this would be done in the RFP or a similar document. And now, with the end of our presentations, I'm going to turn things back over to Frank, and we're going to open the floor to some questions. Frank?
Great. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, presenters. We start right at the top of the first question. Can all of the states disclose what their yearly FTA RTAP state appropriation is? And follow up to that, how much does it cost to outsource it? And how much of the budget goes to admin? Anybody like to take that one on first?
Well, in Pennsylvania, our I don't have it in front of me, but our RTAP allocation's about, I think about $275,000 a year. Our current contract is for about $259,000, and of that, about, I don't know the percentage, but about $50,000 is for administrative cost, and that's, that includes the library and things like that, travel for the people here that are staffing the program. So the majority of it's going for training.
Great, thank you, Bob.
Here in Florida, our annual allocation, I think, is right around $190,000, and we spend $130,000 with the project at Cutter, and then we do another $30,000 separately for our annual rodeo, and then we also have $8,000 in registration underwriting for the annual conference at the Commission for Transport Disadvantage. And our remainder of our money, we let accrue from year to year to try and get a little bit more, critical amount, so that we can do things like this supplemental contract with Cutter to develop this computer-based training. And so as we build up some funds, then we do special projects. As far as admin costs, I don't quite know. I'd have to pull up the contract and see. But even the personnel staff, time at Cutter, those are the same people providing training and providing all the the website and newsletters and all that. So it's productive time. And for in-house admin costs, we can't charge against a contract.
For us in Idaho, we have our rideshare program, and we have mobility management and RTAP grouped together. So it might be hard for me to give you a number, but I'm going to say it's between $60,000 and $70,000 is the magnitude of just our RTAP program. So it's fairly small, and our investment in terms of administering the program from our end, I want to say is probably around, just given the number of hours that I project, is between 2,000 and maybe 3,000.
Great, thank you, guys. This is for all the presenters. Do you spend all, more or less of your federal RTAP allocations on your outsourced program?
In Pennsylvania, everything we spend is on our outsourced program. We don't spend any RTAP funds in-house. Everything is in the contract with PPTA and Penn Train.
Idaho is the same way. I guess I want to clarify that we are not spending any RTAP funds for the administration. So the full amount that I identified is for program delivery. So, what we spend internally to administer the administration, I guess, through CTAI, that's our overhead. So we're not taking any RTAP funds for that.
And ditto in Florida.
Okay, somebody has a question here. Is it possible to email the presentation? The answer is yes. We will email out the PowerPoint probably by late afternoon on Monday. We are also recording this so that you can watch it on our website. That will be out by mid-next week. All state apportionments for 2012 RTAP are available in the Federal Register. That was released also last week. We'll get a comment from one of our audience. Okay, let me see if there's any more questions. While I'm looking to see if there's more questions, does any of the presenters have anything else they'd like to add?
Well, this is Bob from Pennsylvania. I'd just say that if you're going to outsource your contract, you have to make sure you choose a contractor that you can have a close relationship with. This is not a program you can just, I don't believe anyway, this is not a program you can just give to a consultant or a contractor and let them run with it. You need to have oversight and work closely with whoever your contractor is to make it successful.
Idaho's advice is to try to find synergies. So, what we've done with CTAI I think has been good because they do other things with the same group, the same cast of characters, basically, for other things, rideshare mobility management, everything that the iWay.org website provides. Those are additional features and benefits, and so there's leveraging, there's synergy. So we think there's value from that. That's more than just what the RTAP management provides. There's other things they're able to do that gives better value, and you can coordinate things a bit better, kind of programmatically that way.
Okay, I have another question here. Before I read this question out loud, I'm going to launch a poll. If you guys could just take a second and answer this. And while you're answering that, I will ask the question. What are some of the means of communication between your agency and the contractor? And what are the time frames? Do you meet on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis? We'll start with Bob.
Well, it's very informal with us. I mean, I probably talk to Cindy here at Penn Train probably weekly, if not bi-weekly. We see each other at the very least monthly. So, it's not a formal meeting schedule, but we're in contact quite often, and like I said, face-to-face probably monthly.
John?
For Idaho, I'd probably say there's two levels. There's kind of a strategic direction, where CTI is going with all of their programs. There needs to be a strategic discussion between ITD and CTAI, and that's pretty effectively done between my administrator of my division and the executive director of CTAI. And I know on the other end at these kinds of discussions is either with the executive director or also including the actual RTAP program person on that end. From just an administrative standpoint, there's a real close relationship between our folks here who do grant administration and do some performance measurement with the program counterpart at CTAI. So it's kind of two levels, strategic and operational. And, these may be, as needed. I also participate as a member, on the steering committee. So when they meet, I webinar in or connect in. And I was also, for example, involved on the planning committee for the annual conference this year. So, I mean, it's just basically, teamwork. We're part of their team. We include them part of our team for the operational things. And then for strategic direction, it's basically director to director is talking.
Here in Florida, we've had the project with Qatar for enough years now that we've developed a level of comfort and security that we don't really have any set meeting or interaction. It's on an as-need basis. I guess you could say we talk at least once a quarter because that's also when our advisory committee meets and talks. So we have to set that up and go over agenda items and things. But it's pretty much as needed because like I said, they've delivered the product so well and we're very comfortable with it that we've kind of let them handle themselves as much as we can. I don't like to micromanage at all. So until there's a need, I let my contractors work.
Thank you, guys. A couple more questions. Would you guys be willing to share your scope of work and/or RFPs with the other state DOTs that are considering outsourcing?
Sure. I'd be willing to share, I guess ours is kind of unique. We don't do an RFP. We just contract directly with universities with this master contract, but we do have the scope of service, which also becomes the work plan. So I'd be willing to share that. That's no problem.
I think Idaho is maybe a bit, go ahead.
Go ahead. I would be willing to share our scope also, no problem.
We would likewise in Idaho, but keep in mind that we have pieces and parts in there that speak to the other products that are also part of our engagement with CTI. So you have rideshare, you have mobility management in there, and RTAP is a portion of that.
If you guys would be willing to send those over to Shannon, we can send those out as a link to the participants. That would be great.
Okay.
So the question here, how did you consider pass-through expenses compared to direct expenses in your evaluation process, such as processing RTAP scholarship reimbursements to subrecipients as opposed to administrative costs incurred by your RTAP contractor? You want to start with you, Bob?
First of all, we don't have any scholarships in Pennsylvania. We have a pretty healthy state funding program, so we don't currently provide scholarships. We talk about it from time to time, and again, we have a budget that's presented each year by PPTA Penn Train, and we talk about the programs that we need to do and the administrative expenses, and that's how we approve the budget each year. So we have the direct expenses or direct expenses for the trainings that are provided, and then the administrative expenses, and again they include the library, we have a website, a newsletter. Cindy's pretty busy here when she's not out attending trainings. There's a lot that goes on here just every day for the program.
Well, from Idaho, this is where one of the areas where I think we've acknowledged we need to be a bit more, I guess, analytical with this. We do not, as part of the procurement process, we didn't specifically look at some kind of ratio between maybe administrative and service delivery, but I think we realized that is, for example, a cost-effectiveness measure. It's a performance measure. It's a way of seeing if this is making sense. So if I'm answering the question correctly, we did not, I don't think it came into the discussion and the analysis to create the engagement, but we realized that those are things that we're accountable for, and we'd want to make sure we're holding our provider accountable for that.
And in Florida, our contract with Qatar doesn't provide for any kind of scholarship process. We provide on the separate contract, separate projects. We underwrite the registrations for the annual Commission on Transportation Disadvantage Conference. We underwrite everyone's registration on that. And then with the rodeo, that's provided cost-free to the participants. So I guess those are the two only scholarship type programs we have, but they're not, you don't apply, it's not competitive. Every agency has a slot if they choose to fill it.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to turn this back over to Shannon.
And just before we finish things up here, I just wanted to let everybody know about the conference that we have coming up, March 18th to 21st. It's National RTAP, partnering with FTA and the NTTA. If this is something that you enjoyed, networking with your fellow RTAP managers and hearing from other people and how they do it, there is an RTAP program management track at the conference, so there will be more sessions like this geared towards RTAP managers and ways for you to hear how other states are doing things. And I'd like to thank our speakers today, and I'd like to thank Frank and everybody for joining in. And Frank, if there isn't anything else, I think we're all set for today.
Thank you, Shannon, and thank you, Bob, John, and Mike.